World War II Convoy. Saturday, 29th of June, 1940, aboard the SS Mauretania II. At just 18.5 years of age, having served his apprenticeship as an electrician before being drafted into the army, signalman Walter Staveley found himself on the SS Mauretania troopship in 1940. He had no idea where he was headed. Word for word from his diary, this is the account of that voyage. I awoke this morning at 6 o'clock and felt the ship moving. I looked out of the porthole and found that we were just moving out into the river mouth, assisted by tugs. Just out of the river mouth the tugs left us, and we moved out into the open sea. An hour or so after the tugs left us, one or two of the lads were looking pretty green. There was a heavy swell running. Towards the evening we sighted Ireland, and we kept it in sight until dark. At one time we could see Douglas on the one side and the Scottish coast on the other. I think we were steaming dead north practically all day. Our convoy consists of the Aquitania on the extreme port bow, the Queen Mary next, and then ourselves. There were two destroyers and the light cruiser Cumberland steaming at the sides in front of us. The crew say we steam at a steady 24 knots. 30th of June, Sunday, 1940. I think we have steamed west most of the night, and we must be well out into the Atlantic now according to the sun. We can get a very good view of the Queen Mary and the Aquitania now. I think they've moved closer. I had 2 breakfasts this morning, one up and one down, and we seem to be running into heavier weather. We had a pleasant surprise today. Cigarettes are only half price, as we have left the 3-mile limit. We take our lifeboat belts with us wherever we go. 1st of July, Monday, 1940. The sea, thank the Lord, is much milder this morning, and I think I've got over the sickness and found my sea legs. This morning's routine consisted of rifle drill and PT. The rest of the day I spent walking around the ship. 2nd of July, Tuesday, 1940. The weather is still warm today. We had PT and rifle drill again this morning. This afternoon has been uneventful. We have been told that we can write one letter home and it must be handed in to our NCO in the morning, ready for censoring. I wrote it after tea. 3rd of July, Wednesday, 1940. We paraded in KD this morning and handed our letters in before PT. We went down for a swim in the swimming pool. It's not very big, but it's well made. Each squad has about a quarter of an hour in which to swim and get dressed. The weather is slightly warmer and we seem to be travelling south-southeast. 4th of July, Thursday, 1940. The usual routine this morning. I saw a few shoals of flying fish. They fly or jump over the water similarly to seagulls. They are about 6 inches long. Well, for 5 nights and 6 days now the ship has been steadily driving along and we haven't seen 1 square inch of land. We are just beginning to get slightly bored. We have a pretty decent concert every other night, but the place gets too packed and the weather is by no means cool. I spend quite a lot of time on deck with Ron. The sea is very calm and very blue now. It is also no longer necessary to sleep in bed now. We sleep on top. 5th of July, Friday, 1940. The temperature is still rising and we had iced lemonade at dinner today. I was on the fatigue party which carried the cases from the brig to the mess. Our routine seems pretty well fixed now. Revel 6:30, check parade 7 a.m, first sitting for breakfast 7:15, second sitting 8 a.m, parade 9:30 a.m, then rifle drill, swimming and PT. under our own corporal and sometimes a lecture by various people. We had paper aid this afternoon, 8 shillings. The flying fish are more numerous now. There seems to be hundreds all around the ship. Sunset comes very quick, and it is almost dark by 7:45 p.m. By the way, I forgot to mention that we put the clocks back half an hour every day. 6th of July, Saturday, 1940. We had the usual routine again this morning, and then a lecture by Major B on RAF and Army cooperation. Ron and I went to a concert given by the RAMC at night. It was very good indeed. In fact, we've something on our plate to beat it. The skipper and DC Troops was there. OC is something of a comedian. He gave us a talk about discipline, etc., and then the skipper gave one too. Captain Ames, the skipper, is a fine fellow with white snowy hair, a typical sea captain. I think we changed course to east-north-east today. 7th of July, Sunday, 1940. Church parade on prom deck. The OC and the skipper were there. We had rather an amusing service, as the water from the open-air swimming pool kept splashing us with the motion of the ship and wetting the skipper and padre, etc. Nothing unusual happened during the day, but towards the night we changed formation to in-line ahead, with Queen Mary in front, Aquitania second, and us behind. By the way, our total escort is now 1 cruiser. However, we have 1 6-inch gun, 1 3-inch AA gun and a Lewis gun. The QM and the Aquitania are similarly armed, and the cruiser carries 2 Walrus aircraft. So we aren't badly armed. There are rumours that we shall see land tomorrow. It's impossible to work out our position for ourselves because we keep zigzagging all the time, so the rumours can't be counted on. 8th of July, Monday, 1940. This morning was pretty dull, but the rumours proved correct. Just before going down for a swim, there were shouts and cheers. The lads had spotted land, which turned out to be Freetown, Sierra Leone. After the swim we went on deck, and practically the whole draft lined the rails while we sailed up the fairway, past the boom and dropped anchor in the harbour at 1 p.m. The harbour was packed with shipping, tankers, freighters, naval vessels, fishing boats, tugs, pilot boats, yachts, and last and least, the natives in their canoes. Everyone was in high spirits, for it was the first bit of land we had seen for 9 days. Freetown, and all the country around it as far as we can see, is a lovely picture. First of all, coming down the fairway in Freetown, you see the lovely wooded hills shrouded in mist. Then as you get closer, you can see the beach and the palms coming down to the water's edge. Also a lighthouse on the starboard side of the river mouth, coming nearer still. One of 2 plantations on the hillside, and then round a slight curve, the town. All around the town, almost lost in the dense vegetation, are houses, mostly white, almost lost in the dense vegetation on the hills. Then every 100 yards or so, nearly all the houses in or around Freetown are white or cream with red roofs. Just after dropping anchor, the rain started, and how! The real downpour lasted for a quarter of an hour, but it drizzled all day on and off. I watched the natives in their canoes this afternoon. Some will dive for money, others, the older ones, sell fruit, native baskets, monkeys, etc. They are marvellously built men. I bought a silk handkerchief from one of them. Cost me 6pence and 4 woodbines. But we couldn't go ashore, so it was the only way of getting a souvenir. I went on deck after tea, but soon went below. The atmosphere could be cut with a knife. Darkness fell about 7 o'clock, A tanker came alongside this afternoon and started refuelling us. We can almost touch the men on her from our porthole. She is the Pendulous of London. Most of her crew seem to be chaps. 9th July, Tuesday, 1940. We woke this morning after a night of purgatory owing to all portholes having to be shut, and found ourselves still in the harbour. However, about 8 a.m. we felt the ship shudder and we were off again. Most of the smaller shipping moved with us, but once out of the harbour mouth we opened out and left them standing, as it were. We are speeding faster than ever before now, simply tearing through the water. I think we must be behind schedule. It hardly seems possible that all this weight, 35,000 tons, can move so fast. I put my head out of the porthole 2 minutes since, and the air rushing past nearly tore it off. My last glimpse of Sierra Leone was the pale blue mountains, white capped with clouds. I played Ron at draughts in the afternoon. At night, Ron wanted to write up his diary, so I went to a sing-song in the aft canteen. 10th of July, Wednesday, 1940. Weather has been slightly cooler today, although we crossed the line. We had the usual parades this morning, but this afternoon we had a good laugh watching the ceremony of crossing the line. Old Father Neptune and Davy Jones were, I believe, two of the ship's company. Besides Davy Jones and Neptune's, there were 2 bears, 2 RAMC blokes, half a dozen corpses, also RAMC, a barber, executioner, doctor, and a bloke with a black face and a blue dress. I don't know what he was supposed to be. There were also 6 or 7 sea nymphs, mermaids. The ceremony consists of subjecting the victim to a mock trial. The victim is always guilty. He is then daubed with slimy paint, his mouth is filled with soap, and he is then sat on a tip-up chair on the edge of the open-air swimming pool. Daubing him with more slime of various colours, he is then shaved with a wooden razor and finally tipped into the pool to be dealt with by the bears who are floating around all the time. It was very good fun, although 1 or 2 of the victims looked a bit fed up. The show and make-up rather reminded me of Leeds Rag Day. I went to the pictures tonight in the Grand Hall. It was the Warebase. Actually, it was for number 2 mess, but I managed to get in. I think we are going due south now, still speeding. 11th July, Thursday, 1940. The weather is slightly cooler, and we had the usual routine. I played Ron at draughts again, after which we went to a concert in the sergeant's mess. 12th July, Friday, 1940. Weather is cooler still today, and we had the usual routine, except that Lieutenant Fletcher instructed our squad on rifle drill and PT. He certainly knows his stuff, but shouts too much. Henry gave us another concert this afternoon in Ron's cabin. Henry is a variety show on his own. I spent the night playing draughts again with Ron and Sayer. We were paid again today, 10 shillings. There was another sing-song in the aft cabin canteen tonight, but unfortunately we didn't go. Unfortunate because Henry gave us one of his shows. We had another boat drill today. I was right in the middle of a letter when the alarm went. 13th of July, Saturday, 1940. Lieutenant Fletcher took us for a rifle drill again, but not for PT. The morning passed as usual. Ron and I went to the Grand Hall this afternoon, and I saw the Warebase again. I spent the evening washing clothes, arguing, and playing draughts with Ron. The weather is very cool now, and orders say we have to wear SD tomorrow. 14th of July, Sunday, 1940. We had church parade on deck again. The weather was rather chilly at times, so it's a good job we had our SD on. Ron and I spent the afternoon on deck. We played the usual game at night. I won for a change. According to orders, we shall be in Cape Town soon. 15th of July, Monday, 1940. The usual routine, except for baths being stopped indefinitely. We changed course again at night in line ahead, so I think we'll be in Cape Town tomorrow. 16th of July, Tuesday. We sighted the Cape at around 6:30 this morning. At first we could only see the tips of the mountains. Coming closer, we could make out Table Mountain, a really marvellous sight. The rock seems absolutely perpendicular from the sea until you get near enough to see the town. Gradually the whole town comes into view, and the docks and lighthouses as well. There are 2 lighthouses, one on the eastern side of the bay and one on the west. Cape Town and Table Mountain itself are right at the back of the bay, and the mountains, or the mountain, Table Mountain, comes gradually down on either side, on the east for about 4 miles, on the west for about 1 mile. Also the west is a very large hill called Greenpoint, very similar to Oliver's Mount at Scarborough. The whole forms a natural harbour about 5 miles square. Cape Town itself is practically isolated from the rest of the peninsula owing to the terrific mountains surrounding it on 3 sides. The only ways out are around the cliff and mountain roads and railways cut into the sheer mountain sides. There is also a marvellous rope railway from the centre of town right up to the top of the table. Sometimes the clouds cover just the slope of the table for all the world like a tablecloth. It really is a lovely sight, and I'm not too much good at describing it, so I'll leave that to the picture postcards. I'm afraid my eloquence won't do it justice. Well, we dropped anchor at about 10 p.m. and tied up in the harbour. Queen Mary and the Aquitania stayed just outside the harbour. We stood on the deck admiring it until finally we had our passes issued and we went ashore. I shall never forget the marvellous time we had ashore. I won't try to describe it in detail, but the Cape Towners gave us a glorious time. As we walked from the docks into town, motorists stopped and took the lads on sightseeing tours all around the district. Afterwards, stopping again at hotels or their private houses or road houses and treating the lads to drinks, 10-course dinners, cigars, cigarettes, chocolate, fruit. In fact, we were given the run of the town. The folks were vying with each other as to who would take the most soldiers out. I think most of the people had the day off from work, some had 2. There were organised tours the second day in private cars. They have a 2-minute silence every morning here when a bugle sounds in memory of the men who fell in the last war. The native people are very loyal to us, but hate the Dutch, some of whom will not observe the silence. The ceremony, however, is very impressive. I was very much struck by the way the white people seem to be able to run the big cars. Everybody seems to have a big car, most of which are American. 30 horsepower, 40 horsepower and 60 are not uncommon. 17th July, Wednesday, 1940. We were allowed out till 10 o'clock today. We had another marvellous day. Ron and I went ashore at about 11 a.m. Walked into town, about 5 minutes walk, and spent an hour or so walking around the town, after which we were picked up by a car whilst we stood talking to 3 lads in the street. We were picked up by a man and a woman. The man was an agent for an insurance firm. The lady stayed at the same hotel, and he was taking her there from the office. Well, we all went to this hotel and met the rest of the people there, including his wife. He then gave us 2 or 3 drinks, and then we had dinner. After dinner we went for a long tour around Table Mountain, the Rhodes Memorial, Hout Bay. In fact, all around the place. We called for a drink at the Roadhouse in Hout Bay, after which we went back to his hotel for tea. After tea we ended a perfect day playing billiards with the folks in the hotel. We set off back for the boat in the car about 9:40 and arrived back just in nice time. There we left them after promising to write when we arrived where we were going. He also made us promise to call and see him if ever we came back this way. 18th July, Thursday, 1940. Well, all good things come to an end, and this morning we moved out of the harbour to the accompaniment of so many groans of disgust and sailed round the point of the Cape round to Simonstown, a naval base near Cape Town about 20 miles away. We arrived about 12 a.m. and dropped anchor alongside the Aquitania and Queen Mary, who, I forgot to mention, had sailed round to here yesterday. The cruiser escorting us now is the Australian ship Canberra. We left the old Cumberland at Cape Town. At first we thought we might be going ashore because we could see the lads from the other two boats sending lads ashore in tugs. Anyway, we stayed aboard all day. 19th July, Friday, 1940. A tanker, the British Loyalty of London, came alongside this morning and started fueling us again. Most of us spent the morning fishing. The sea is alive with fish. However, bent pins and cotton aren't much good for sea fishing, and I'm afraid we didn't exactly get a large haul. I caught some after about 2 hours fishing on a line about 80 foot long. It was a queer fish. When pulling it up the side, the thing blew up like a balloon, and when we examined it on deck, we found it had teeth and croaked like a frog. The tanker left us about 1 p.m, and then they started preparing to sail again. We set off about 2:30 p.m. Whilst we were being paid, I got 10 shillings again today, we had an extra escort of 2 Coastal Command aircraft. I believe they were Advro Ansons. Once out of the bay we sailed east and spent the rest of the day and night in rough weather in the Indian Ocean. 20th July, Saturday 1940. The sea is rather rough today. We have been rolling around all over the place. There were no real parades today, so we had practically the whole day free. We had a sad blow this afternoon. We had to move out of our cabin to make room for the officers. I'm now sleeping in the 3rd class lounge. I'm now sleeping on a dilapidated bed instead of a spring bed. But there are about 40 of us in here, so we should have some fun. 21st July, Sunday, 1940. It appears that the Cumberland has been with us since we left Cape Town, although she was out of sight. This morning, at 9 o'clock, she came over the horizon, came close to us, flashed a message to us, and sped back in the direction she had come. The message was pinned up on the notice boards. It read, "Commodore Convoy Troops and Nursing Staff. Goodbye and best of luck, Cumberland." I wish we were going back with them. There was the usual church parade on deck. Ron and I didn't go. 22nd of July, Monday 1940. Nothing unusual happened today, the usual routine. 23rd of July, Tuesday 1940. We changed back into KD, usual routine. The sea is getting slightly rougher. There are hundreds of rumours as to where we are going. Colombo, Aden, Mombasa, China. I gave up believing rumours back in dear old England. 24th of July, Wednesday, 1940. The sea is very rough today. Sometimes we seem to rise clean out of the water. We had an official check parade this morning instead of the usual parade. I spent the afternoon on the foredeck watching the spray coming over the side. I was nearly blown over myself once when the wind blew me from the bows to the forecastle. I was wet through 3 or 4 times trying to dodge the spray. 25th July, Thursday, 1940. The sea is still rough today. In fact, I believe it's rougher than yesterday. The wind is also stronger, and we had quite a job trying to walk about without bumping into the walls and doorposts. We had half an hour PT this morning and the pay parade. We got £1 this time. I missed dinner and tea today as I felt slightly off colour and thought I'd feel better if I laid down. I spent the day from 11:30 laying on my bed and taking it easy. 26th of July, Friday, 1940. The sea is still rough. We were dismissed at 9:30 this morning as the preliminary sports were run off this morning. The finals were run in the afternoon. I spent the morning on the foredeck watching the sea again. This afternoon and night I spent writing more letters. 27th of July, Saturday, 1940. Nothing unusual except for heavy weather. 28th of July, Sunday, 1940. No church parade today, rifle inspection instead. I spent most of the night watching a lighthouse on the starboard. They say we shall be in Colombo in the morning at 11. High spirits tonight. 29th July, Monday, 1940. We sighted Ceylon at about 9:30. Land is very flat and very difficult to see. I think we had some trouble this morning as we came in, for the cruiser dropped behind, and when on the horizon fired 4 or 5 salvos. Anyhow, we carried on and waited outside the harbour for the pilot. The most outstanding thing in Colombo, seen from the sea, is a massive sign, Ceylon for good tea. The pilot came out in his launch to the Aquitania first and took her in. Then another pilot came out and gave instructions to our skipper, such as they were. It was rather funny. The pilot in his small launch shouts up to the skipper, "All right, come in, are you clear?" The skipper shouts, "Have I to ignore the signal FFC?" So the pilot shouts back, "Aye, this is all right, lad, come in." So in we went, dropped anchor about 11:30. We were as usual free for the day, so I spent the time watching the natives in their boats. I was twisted out of 3 shillings for 2 ebony elephants. 30th of July, Tuesday, 1940. Went ashore in the tenders at about 10:45 a.m. We were marched through the town to a point on the seafront and dismissed till 5:30 p.m. We were stopped by a lady who offered to take us a lift in her car. First call was the bank, where we changed our money. The rate is 6 rupees, 60 cents for 10 shillings. Our next call was the Sunday tea rooms, where we had a light lunch of tea and cakes and egg on toast. After a short tour around the town, we were accompanied to her house and accompanied by her friend, who was also driving some of the lads around. We had a drink of pretty good beer. The house had been built by some of the early Dutch settlers and was very cool. At 1 o'clock our guide brought us back to town and left us, as she had an appointment in the afternoon. I spent the afternoon walking around the place for a while and riding around in a rickshaw. I also made a call to the GPO and posted 2 postcards. I had a very interesting time bargaining with the natives, but they stung me in the end. I bought a ring for 2 rupees, which I could have bought for 6pence in Leeds. I spent a very interesting half an hour as I was walking back to the collecting point, talking to an upper-class Bengalese man who seemed to want to tell me about Ceylon. At 5:30 we returned to the ship after a very good day ashore. In the evening the captain of the Mauretania gave a speech of farewell, and I spent the rest of the time packing up. 31st of July, Wednesday, 1940. Sad day. About 9:30 a.m. we left the old Mauretania in lighters and boarded a much smaller ship that was lying about 200 yards away. She was one of the P&O and BI ships, the SS Amra of London. Rather a big change from the other. Most of us were bunged down into the hold about water level. The ship stinks. She is manned by Lascars. Some of the officers are Lascars. At any rate, brown. It's almost like the Black Hole of Calcutta. We immediately christened her the Allmark and said that it was a pity we couldn't sail in her. We eat at messes of 14. In our hold there are 6 tables of 14 men. We were issued with eating utensils this morning. All cooking is done by the natives in their gallery. It's not too bad, although everything seems to have a peculiar smell. We spent the night in hammocks, and apart from 1 or 2 lads getting nasty bruises and one a fractured wrist, we didn't do so bad. I spent a whole hour adjusting mine so that it was impossible to fall out. August 1st, Thursday, 1940. Revel, 6 a.m. What a mess. Everybody trying to get washed, changed, dressed and cleaned up at once, and everyone getting half strangled in his hammock strings while they try to untie it. The weather is very sultry. The day passed monotonously, and the sooner we get off here the better. I hope we aren't on longer than a week. There are 4 meals a day. Breakfast at 8, dinner at 12:45, tea at 3:15 and supper at 6:30. No smoking is allowed in the hold, so we have to go on deck. What a life! The troops from the Queen Mary have been arriving in the harbour. Queen Mary is at the naval base. Was mess orderly today. Ugh. I nearly forgot to mention that we have plenty of company down here. There are hundreds of cockroaches, some of them as big as cats. 2nd of August, Friday, 1940. Revel, 6 a.m, parade 9:30. We had a lecture how we were to carry on whilst on board, and then we were dismissed. We sailed from Colombo at 14:15 hours. I think there are 11 ships in the convoy, 2 of which were auxiliary cruisers for escort. The sky is rather overcast, and there is a heavy swell in the sea. The ship pitched and tossed quite a bit, although not as much as I'd expected. 3rd of August, Saturday, 1940. Bank holiday Saturday. Marvellous day. Spent all night from Revel to bedtime lounging around the ship. Wrote 1 letter home at night. 4th of August, Sunday, 1940. Just sailed on. 5th of August, Monday, 1940. Same again. 6th of August, Tuesday, 1940. We sighted Bombay at about 9 o'clock, and we were told to be ready to go ashore in any minute. However, we missed the tide or something, so we dropped anchor just outside harbour and stayed there all day. I was mess orderly again. 7th of August, Wednesday, 1940. A very disappointing day after looking forward to going ashore and hanging around all day watching the others go in and shop, then to be told we're not going in until the morning. Everyone is fed up just now, nothing to do at all. There was a blackout tonight for some half-brained reason. The other shops in the town are lit up, but our ship is blacked out. The army works in a weird and wonderful way. There was a good variety of rumours today, caused, I suppose, by our idleness. One is that we were not supposed to be on this draft. Another, that we are only here for 4 months, training and then going back to England. What a hope! There is also rumour that enemy subs have been sighted outside the harbour, what may or may not account for the blackout. At any rate, I don't believe any of it. We have to be up at 4:45 tomorrow, as they say we are going on an early tide. However, knowing the army as I do, I shouldn't be surprised if we are still aboard this hooker tomorrow night. I'm afraid if we are, there will be a riot. 8th of August, Thursday, 1940. Paraded with full kit on deck this morning. Reveille 4:45, expected going ashore as we moved into dock about 7 a.m. However, after hanging around on deck till 10:30 a.m, we were told to take our kit off and parade again. We then paraded again, walked ashore and were marched to a dismissal point in the centre of Bombay, which was a picture house. We were in our thick shorts and shirts. It was very warm. We were dismissed at 11 and Ron and Goodwin and I went for a walk round. First we went to an insurance place and changed our money. I got 4 shillings, rupees 5 annas for 8 and 6. We then went for dinner to a recommended restaurant. We had a good feed and did we enjoy it. We then walked round again. I wish I had the space and time to write of the queer things we saw. Snake charmers, beggars, pariahs, fakirs, Buddhists, Brahm monks, Muslims and Hindus, all sorts of men and customs. Each separate sect have a different distinguishing mark. Some have a star shape burnt into their foreheads, some have a ring, and others just a black dot of paint. Everyone seems to have a different marking. After dinner, the 3 of us finally decided to go for a bus ride. We caught the first bus and each gave the conductor 2 annas, and we told him to tell us when to get off when our 2 annas worth had finished. As it happened, we were lucky and our ride finished just outside the Victoria and Albert Museum. The museum is in the middle of the zoological gardens. First of all we went round the museum and then around the gardens. Actually it was a museum, garden and zoo combined, so as we walked around the garden we saw all the animals. The weather was very hot, but there were occasional heavy showers. However, after a very enjoyable walk we caught a bus back to town and went on to the pictures. Saps at Sea was the title, and Laurel and Hardy were the actors. I thought it too daft to laugh at, and was almost bored to tears. The seats were half price, 9 annas. The picture house was a pretty modern one. The only difference from an English picture house was the numerous electric fans around the place. A very noticeable thing when the show was over, The King was played, and 3/4 of the audience, comprised mostly of natives, walked straight out. By the way, today is the day that Britain offered India her independence. Also, I forgot to say that the natives have been celebrating the feast of the sun god, and we saw several processions through the streets. After the show we went to the cafe again for tea. I had the same as I had for dinner, egg and chips, etc. We then went for a general walk around the native quarter and then back to the ship. There was a check parade at 10 o'clock. We just got back in nice time. As we had handed our hammocks in, we had to make the best of it and sleep on the deck or the tables. 9th of August, Friday 1940. The vibration of the ship's engines woke me this morning, and when I looked out I found that we had moved to another part of the docks. At about 9:30 We paraded in full marching order and disembarked to the quay side. After standing there for the usual half an hour while the officers checked up, we embarked on another ship. This was the HMT Devonshire, a regular troop ship which had moved into dock an hour earlier and moored in the next berth to us. The Devonshire is a proper troop ship and has only been built 12 months ago. Everything is spick and span and run to a fixed system, a big contrast to the Amra. I should imagine she's a 20,000 tonner. We spent the day watching the loading up of the supplies and walking around the docks. We were allowed ashore with the dock boundary for about 4 hours. I turned in about 9:30, but about half an hour afterwards went on deck as I felt the ship moving. However, it turned out to be a short move to the entrance of the harbour, where we tied up in readiness to move straight off in the morning. 10th of August, Saturday 1940. We left Bombay this morning about 7:30. The weather was pretty rough and we seemed to be having a rough going. Our convoy consists of 11 troop ships, 1 cargo ship and 2 auxiliary cruisers. I don't think we're doing above 10 knots. The Devonshire armaments consist of 2 AA guns and 2 Lewis guns. I reported this morning for special duty at 9 a.m. There are 10 of us who have to sweep the decks 3 times a day, 9 a.m, 1 p.m. and 4:30 p.m. I think it's a permanent job, worse luck. Anyhow, we get out of parades. The job takes about 3/4 of an hour each time and the rest of the day is our own. There are 1 or 2 duties to do aboard this ship, so we may have landed a good job. 11th of August, Sunday, 1940. I had some trouble dropping off to sleep last night, and since we weighed anchor the portholes have been closed. Our mess is right forward and the water comes well above our portholes when it's rough. The room is very hot. 12th of August, Monday, 1940. Sea very rough today. Weather pretty dull. Nothing particular happened today. I slept on deck at night. 13th of August, Tuesday, 1940. Sea rougher still. The ship almost stands up vertical. The weather is still cool and dull. We had an air raid practice this morning. I think they're expecting a bit of trouble. The crew say this ship has been bombed every time she's been on this route before. I spent the evening on deck listening to the wireless speaker and practicing shorthand with H. Riley. We're still going west. 14th of August, Wednesday, 1940. The sea is still rough, but not quite as bad as yesterday. Still heading due west. We had another practice this morning and nothing unusual has happened during the day, except that we had our lemonade ration stopped owing to the fact that someone smashed the padlock off the icebox and won't own up. Sad day. Most of the lads seem to be getting over the seasickness now. The current rumour is that we're going to Aden. I think it's very likely, and according to my reckoning, we should be either Saturday or Sunday. The distance by regular trade route is 1,600 miles approximately. 15th of August, Thursday, 1940. Sea not quite as rough. Our escort was strengthened this morning by a cruiser of the Leander class at about 11 o'clock. She patrols up and down in a zigzag direction across the front of the convoy. I found out this morning how deceptive distance is at sea. When the ships blow the foghorns, the steam coming from the whistles stops 2 or 3 seconds before the sound. So by calculating the distance the stops are away from us, I generally found that they're about 4 times as far away as they look. 16th of August, Friday, 1940. The sea became smoother during the night, and this morning it was just like a sheet of glass. It was a marvellous sight. The sun was very hot. From today until we land, we have to carry our respirators and tin hats, life belts around with us wherever we go. Also, from and starting tomorrow morning, Revel is at 4:30, and we must parade at 5 on the main deck with life belt, etc., and stand by until sunrise. They mounted a couple of extra Lewis guns on the bridge this morning. I guess we shall be seeing some action soon. We had another addition to our escort this morning, and we were joined by another naval vessel. I don't know if she is a destroyer or a cruiser, as she's too far away. I spent most of the day watching the sea, as it was easy to see the fish with it being so calm. There were all sorts of fish around this morning: sunfish, dolphins, flying fish, and others I can't name. Some are coloured every colour in the rainbow. We were paid again this afternoon, the usual 10 bob. I also washed a few socks, etc. I spent the evening on deck with Ron, watching the washing dry. The sea had by the evening become slightly rougher. We slept on deck tonight, as it was covered with canvas awnings this morning, so we were safe from the rain. We had to sleep on the top deck, as they filled 2 small collapsible swimming pools on the main deck today, and consequently the deck is soaked. 17th of August, Saturday, 1940. This morning the sea was as smooth as glass again. We stood by at 4:30 till sunrise. We had a lecture on deck at 10:30, after which we were joined by another convoy of 5 ships and a naval sloop. Our convoy now consists of about 16 ships and 5 naval vessels. Earlier this morning, 2 of our original convoy left us and turned inland. I think they're going to Aden with some RAF on board. We heard some rumbling noises like gunfire this morning, and when the news was read out tonight, it appears that it was our navy off Somaliland which was doing the firing on the advancing Italians. We sighted land this evening on each side of the ships. There were mountains, one of which had a lighthouse on top. I think we are now in the Red Sea, as we are told that this is the most dangerous part of the trip. 18th of August, Sunday, 1940. Stand by again this morning. Sea smooth as glass. Direction north-northwest. Ships steaming in 2 lines now. I met a lad from Meanwood on deck in the morning. Smith is his moniker, and he is in the RASC. The weather was much warmer today. The temperature on our mess deck averages about 95 degrees. I slept on deck at night. "19th of August, Monday, 1940. There was no official standby this morning, but just after Revel a plane was sighted and all took cover. However, after 5 minutes the all clear was blown and we resumed our duties. It was a Blenheim of ours. Later in the morning we also saw an Avro Anson, but no alarm was given. Nothing unusual happened during the rest of the day. Weather sweltering. Slept on deck. I was sick in the afternoon. Think this is the after effects of the rough sea. 20th of August, Tuesday, 1940. HO standby. I reported sick. Go for treatment 3 times a day for 2 days. Don't feel very good. Excused duties, so I took it easy all day. Nothing unusual occurred except that the Navy plane got into slight difficulties whilst landing, which caused the cruiser a slight delay. I think we have passed Port Sudan, so I expect we are going to Cairo. I think we should be there by Friday. 21st of August, Wednesday, 1940. Orders to be ready for disembarkation. 22nd of August, Thursday, 1940. disembarked at Port Suez, went by train to Mahdi Camp, 10 miles south of Cairo. That's the end of the diary of Walter Staveley. He then spent the war years in Egypt as part of the Egypt and the surrounding area, I should say, under the North Africa campaign. The Queen Mary troop movements are verified by war records, which show that Captain Irving, the convoy was recorded and confirmed. In fact, match up exactly with the dates of Walter Staveley's diary account. The Queen Mary, as you know, was in convoy with other ships, and all this is recorded in the war records of the time. The Reveille, or Revielle, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, is a bugle call most often associated with the military. It's chiefly used to wake military personnel at sunrise, and that's been referred to several times in his diary. What follows are photographs that he took during 1940, 41 and 42, whilst he spent time in and around North Africa. The North African campaign can be summarised from notes from Wikipedia as follows. The North African campaign of the Second World War took place in North Africa from the 10th of June 1940 to the 13th of May 1943. It included campaigns fought in the Libyan and Egyptian deserts, the Western Desert Campaign, also known as the Desert War, and in Morocco and Algeria, Operation Torch, as well as Tunisia, the Tunisia Campaign. The campaign was fought between the Allies, many of whom had colonial interests in Africa dating from the late 19th century, and the Axis powers. The Allied war effort was dominated by the British Commonwealth and exiles from German-occupied Europe. The United States officially entered the war in December 1941 and began direct military assistance in North Africa on the 11th of May 1942. Fighting in North Africa started with the Italian declaration of war on the 10th of June 1940. On the 14th of June, the British Army's 11th Hussars, assisted by elements of the 1st Royal Tank Regiment, 1st RTR, crossed the border from Egypt into Libya and captured the Italian Fort Capuzzo. This was followed by an Italian counter-offensive into Egypt and the capture of Sidi Barrani in September 1940, and again in December 1940 following a British Commonwealth counter-offensive, Operation Compass. During Operation Compass, the Italian 10th Army was destroyed and the German Afrika Corps, commanded by Erwin Rommel, who later became known as the Desert Fox, was dispatched to North Africa in February 1941 during Operation Sonnenblume to reinforce Italian forces in order to prevent a complete Axis defeat. A fluctuating series of battles for control of Libya and regions of Egypt followed, reaching a climax in the Second Battle of El Alamein in October 1942, when British Commonwealth forces under the command of Lieutenant General Bernard Montgomery inflicted a decisive defeat on Rommel's Afrika Corps and forced its remnants into Tunisia. After the Anglo-American landings, Operation Torch, in northwest Africa in November 1942 and subsequent battles against Vichy France forces who had then changed sides, the Allies encircled several 100,000 German and Italian personnel in northern Tunisia and finally forced their surrender in May 1943. Operation Torch in November 1942 was a compromise operation that met the British objective of securing victory in North Africa while allowing American armed forces the opportunity to engage in the fight against Nazi Germany on a limited scale. In addition, as Joseph Stalin, the leader of the Soviet Union, had long been pleading for a second front to be opened to engage the Wehrmacht and relieve pressure on the Red Army. It provided some degree of relief for the Red Army on the Eastern Front by diverting Axis forces to the North African theatre. Over half the German Ju-52 transport planes that were needed to supply the encircled German and Romanian forces at Stalingrad were tied up supplying Axis forces in North Africa. Information gleaned via British ultra-code breaking intelligence proved critical to Allied success in North Africa. Victory for the Allies in this campaign immediately led to the Italian campaign, which culminated in the downfall of the fascist government in Italy and the elimination of Germany's main European ally. After the war, Walter Staveley, having gained expertise in the communications part of the signal regiment that he was in North Africa, enabled him to then join GCHQ of Cheltenham, where he remained for his working life and in retirement.